Hey, Sats fans, welcome back to Swan Signal Live. I'm Brady Swenson, your host. Wow. I mean, I don't really have any other words. Wow. That was an epic day yesterday, an absolutely monumentally historic day for Bitcoin. I have my friends here to talk about it today. John Haar, how you doing, John?
What's up, Brady? Crazy day, plenty to talk about. Feels like we've had a lot to talk about for the last, 2-3 weeks. And, it's kind of come to it somewhat of a crescendo, but I think the next weeks and months are also going to be very exciting too.
Absolutely. Brandon Quittem, welcome.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
And Steven Lipka, how's it going, buddy?
It can go higher. It's not a crescendo. We're just getting started.
You're right. Wrong word, crescendo. It's kind of like, it feels like we've reached some point of like temporary clarity, but yeah, it's still a lot to happen.
We're just getting going here. My gosh.
Yeah, just getting going. It was sideways for quite a while there. We ran up with the launch of the ETFs, maybe overshot a little bit where the market thought we should be. So we went sideways in a crab market, a bull crab market, but a crab market nonetheless for the last 7 months or so. And this may be what the market was waiting for, especially the last few months, to see the outcome of this election. I personally think it would have been one thing that this campaign cycle accomplished was the end of the Elizabeth Warren war on crypto. Yes. We saw this bipartisan support for the Fit 21 bill earlier this year, and we saw Kamala Harris talk about, ushering in some friendly regulation so that we can develop this technology in the United States, similar to how we approach the internet and regulations on the internet in the 90s. So that was great to see. I think either way, it would have been, a good environment, an increasingly welcoming environment for Bitcoin. However, one of the candidates has promised, one, to free Ross Ulbricht, two, to create a Bitcoin national reserve. And those are the two big ones. So obviously those promises are much more explicit and much bigger in scope than what we saw from the Democratic side. So let's put, look, Trump has issues, right? I have issues with Trump. I have issues with pretty much any political candidate, but I don't like him as a leader. I don't like him as an example of a good man to my children, right? However, Bitcoin is extremely important to the future of this world, and will solve a lot of the problems that fiat has caused. And most people in this country, in this world, don't understand that yet. And hopefully, we pulled the future forward with the outcome of yesterday's election, and will bring Bitcoin to the world faster pace. So that's my take. I would love to. Let's go to Steven next, and let's hear your takeaways from yesterday.
So I just want to drill down on one of the first things you said. The Elizabeth Warren choke point banking committee coalition is so over. It's not even fun. It's so over. It's ridiculously over.
Yep.
They got completely blown out. And this isn't just a Trump win. This is hundreds of wins across the House, or 100 wins across the House and Senate of, I'm just going to say crypto, because obviously there's a lot of crypto money flowing around, of pro-crypto candidates displacing anti-crypto candidates, including key ones. Warren's off the banking committee. A friendly guy is on it. The Trump administration is coming in. What happened is their entire machine, I mean, broadly speaking, the Democratic machine that they had going on that was very solid was so blown up because of, in part, this opposition to crypto. They just lost it all for something that they had no upside on. They are now massively behind in all three branches of government for years to come. And for what? Their animosity towards these assets, they will never try again in the foreseeable future. It will be political suicide. There's no upside in opposing it. And they just got completely blown out because of these actions. Like, you can't overstate the degree to which the era we just lived through, like, it's gone. It's not coming back. And it's a new chapter.
I could just chime in there, Brady. I would say,
Yep.
yeah, it's like I think they're looking at the calculus and saying, what did we get for being so anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin? And they're just like, there was really no benefit that came from it. And it was like all downside for them. Do I think that if I try to just play the other side and say, how could that, I agree with Steven that this is going to be the case for months and years to come, likely. What might change that? There would have to be some like really dramatic event that changes public perception. It's like, this bad actor in the world used Bitcoin for this thing. And then you can kind of start to drum up, opposition maybe again. But anyway, that's like a ways away. Like for now, I think the takeaway is they're just looking at it in hindsight and saying, we got nothing for being anti-Bitcoin, anti-crypto, or not even being anti, just not being the party who embraced it more. And I think they're just going to look at it and say, okay, this is an easy one to just check the box and say, don't do that again in the future.
Yeah.
It's just worthless. It's a worthless position for them to hold. It gives them nothing. It costs them everything. And I mean, the industry put $500 million into campaigns this year. They didn't get any of that money. They got crushed by that money.
Brandon Quittem, any takeaways?
This is going to be so incredibly obvious in hindsight. Imagine 5 or 10 years from now where most of the hash rate or a large portion of the hash rate's here. Much of the owners of Bitcoin are here. The largest companies are here. It's going to usher in an orange age. And yeah, it's going to be super obvious in hindsight. And you drop the bag, Elizabeth Warren and all your cronies. Maybe because they're just scared of change, and humans were saying we don't want electricity, we don't want the automobile. Maybe it's just run of the mill, scared of change. Maybe they were paid off. Maybe they just made it a partisan issue for political reasons. I don't know their reasons, but I agree it's gone. It's going to be obvious, and the nation state adoption game just accelerated because the shackles holding Bitcoin down are broken off, and I think the next year or two are potentially going to be nutty.
I think it was going to be nutty anyway. I think it's going to be like 10x nutty now. I mean, the shackles are off. Like, I think what you're trying to say there basically is that all of the risk for any big business in this country is now gone. Any employee at an investment firm or a money manager, the risk is gone. The ETFs went a long way to de-risking career risk, of course, but now it's just completely gone. Microsoft, for instance, will have a shareholder vote. I bet, if we had parallel worlds, if Harris had won, that vote would maybe have 10, 20% fewer shareholders recommending to Microsoft that they should hold Bitcoin in their treasury. And it's now much more likely that the board of Microsoft will indeed approve the purchase of Bitcoin for the Microsoft treasury, just as an example, right?
100%.
So yeah, we're just going to see that. And the gradually then suddenly thing, I mean, it's going to be a race. And so we could see suddenly now, because of this outcome, we could see suddenly a lot sooner. We will see suddenly, I'm sure, a lot sooner than we would have otherwise. So yeah, it's a big deal for Bitcoin adoption. And we just all need to try as much as possible to stay level-headed. It's really hard when the hopium hits and all of us are getting rich and we've got girlfriends, and it's hard to remember like the real reasons that we're here to support Bitcoin, and that we've still got a lot of work to do, and we've got to make sure the promises are kept and all of that. So there's still a whole lot to do, but man, it is exciting for Bitcoin adoption, no doubt.
And just to drill down on something you said, the world, like, you hit a really key point. Like, the world where Bitcoin is viewed as this like alternative out there thing is deleted. That world is gone. You now have spot ETFs by the largest money managers with tens of billions of dollars in inflows. That's only going to ramp up. And you have a three branch federal government that is now actively pro Bitcoin, at least on some level. And so the idea that if you work at a fund, you work at a tech company, you work at a public traded firm, like, and you go in and say, hey, I want to talk to you guys about Bitcoin as an asset allocation. I want to talk to you about Bitcoin on the balance sheet. You cannot really be laughed out of the room in the same way that you could. Like, it's a different, like, maybe they won't do it, but it is a different conversation. And even the risk of, like, you know, like Microsoft's having this vote, there's this sort of like plausible deniability that they had where they could be like, oh, well, it was this like fringe asset and we didn't know what to do. Now, I mean, if companies don't choose to adopt it after their shareholders basically push for it to happen, I think the ramifications and risks there just got so much larger because like Bitcoin just became to some degree institutionally accepted. I really feel that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we take a look at some exit polling, or John, did you have some more there?
Just on that last point, I think all of us, anyone who's been in Bitcoin long enough, there's like a handful of typical retorts and objections that people have to Bitcoin. So the government's going to ban it, uses too much energy. Some other crypto is going to overtake it. It's insecure because, I don't understand cryptography, there's more, but I think what Steven's highlighting is that the main one about the government's going to ban it and it's going to go to zero. That one is just the chances of that are becoming exceedingly low. So we're still going to have to talk to people about, why the network is secure, how to secure your own Bitcoin, public-private key cryptography. The volatility is another objection people have. Like, you're still going to have to talk about volatility, still going to have to talk about energy usage, why proof of work is a good thing. Like, all those things are still there. But the whole idea of like, oh, one day the government's just going to wake up and say Bitcoin's illegal and you're a criminal, just getting exceedingly, exceedingly low.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's take a look at some of the exit polling. I love exit polling because it gives you a sense of where the country is as opposed to just the outcome of the election itself. No surprise, the economy is the number one concern amongst registered voters. So this is 90% said the economy was extremely important or very important, especially in a time where we've been going through inflation, 9% inflation in 2022. I think, basic goods are, 40, in some cases, 40% more expensive. In some cases, a lot more than that. I'm definitely seeing at the grocery store, oh my God, like I go to the grocery store and it's $350 to buy my family groceries for, 10 days or something like that. It's absolutely insane. I made a quick run to the grocery store the other day and they're like $180. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and the woman behind me was just like, yeah, right. Like it's a bit of like, this is the fastest inflation that our, kind of three generations have been through. There was pretty bad inflation in the early 80s. But, I think my generation and the younger generations, this is certainly the worst we've seen. So of those who said the economy was extremely important, or said the economy was in the toilet, 69% of them voted for Trump. There's the meme number, obviously a significant margin there. So this is, part of this is, and a tale as old as presidential politics, which is, it's the economy, stupid. James Carville, who is Clinton's campaign manager, said that famously in the 90s. And so this was a change election if you look at the condition of the economy. And so there were like tailwinds there for Trump, and that played out in great fashion this year. So Steven, any ideas there? I think give me your take, and then I'll have a couple other thoughts.
I think there's a few things, right? And I mean, one, it's also like exit polling is highly variable. Like it
Certainly
changes
not perfect
tremendously wherever you go. And I've seen some other ones that, have some slightly different ranked orders. Economy is pretty much always near the top, but just kind of data point for people in the audience, like it's an art, not a science. But I think the one thing that does come out of most of the exit polling that I've seen is like, it is this concern about the economy. It is people feeling like the country has not been on the right track. It hasn't been in a good place. And so obviously that led to a relatively historic Trump win. I mean, a Republican candidate has not won the popular vote for decades.
20 years.
Like
2004 was the last time.
And there probably weren't a lot of like other times before that even. It's relatively rare, and as well as the other branches of government. So obviously it helped Trump here. But I actually think it helps Bitcoin. And the reason I think it helps Bitcoin is when you look at this combination of dissatisfied with the economy, but also the Trump vote, you have to think of the Trump vote as the higher risk, higher return vote, right? Like voting for Harris is in some ways, to really just boil it down, it's voting for a more stable status quo thing, but that's probably going to be like mildly like net negative. It's going to like keep doing this kind of slow decay, but you're not going to have as much volatility or as much exogenous shocks or things like that. The Trump vote is much more like, you do have a higher risk of unknowns and volatility and certain things like that. There's a higher risk there, but I think there's also in many ways a much higher potential for return of like actual structural changes to various systems. And so my only point in making here is just, if you think of it in this way, the appetite of the American people to vote for Trump over Harris and this economic dissatisfaction, it tells me that where people are at, they want something different. They're willing to risk it. They're willing to take a little risk for change. And I actually think that's an incredible environment for Bitcoin, because you're looking at this like novel. Yeah, it's more volatile. It's new. It's a different thing. But I think people's appetites in this election show that they're going to be more receptive to ideas like Bitcoin than maybe if results went differently.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's Brandon, John, if not, I'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I got one comment here. So
Yep.
I think it's obvious that the economy played a huge role. You look around, people are hurting, people feel it. I think that was pretty obvious pre any exit polls. That was the water we're swimming in. And yet I didn't see much of that out of the Democratic Party's platform. I didn't see it in my internet bubble. I didn't see it anywhere. And instead, I saw an entirely different argument around other social issues that are clearly lower on the rank. And so to me, what this is really a conversation around the media landscape, around the realignment, around how out of touch a large portion of the country is. And I'm going to read a tweet now from Tim Urban, Wait But Why, my favorite blog on the internet by a mile. He said, if you're on the losing side of a landslide, there are two ways to react. Number one, eat your humble pie, listen, reflect, evolve, and come back better next time. Or number two, arrogantly proclaim that everyone is dumb except us. And that's
or just completely deny that you lost altogether.
I don't see much,
which is part of the Trump playbook. You're always strong. You never lose. If you lose, there's cheating involved, and you just always deny. It's the Roy Cohn playbook, and he runs it to absolute perfection, and it works. It absolutely works.
I don't disagree, and I don't like that about Trump. However, it wasn't a landslide in 2020, and this was a landslide. I think that's a big difference.
I am actually, one of the things I was saying going into the election is I want clear win, one side or the other. Like, you can't. I mean, imagine going through a Bush v. Gore with Trump. It would have been awful. So anyway, at least
win is so good for the country. If it was a narrow race, it would have been miserable. It would have been just miserable.
Yeah. No, this is a silver lining from yesterday as well.
Yeah. Brady, can I just make one comment, like a go forward, something that I think is going to be interesting? So I thought it would have been interesting the last 4 years if Trump were president. Like, there was going to be some amount of inflation, right? Like, I think anybody's just kind of silly to believe that if Trump were president, that was just going to be 2% CPI. Like, it was going to be something higher than that. We can argue about what bill led to more inflation, whatever, but there would have been some CPI that a Trump president from 2020 to 2024 would have had to deal with. And I think that's just an interesting thought exercise to think about. What would he have said? Because he definitely would have, deflected it, tried to make it not a big deal. That's just an interesting thought exercise. But going forward, I'm like most people on this space listening to this, they're probably on the "there's nothing stops this train." So if you believe that, that generally means that price inflation is going to be something north of 2% on average for the coming years. And again, you could debate whether it's going to be higher or lower under a Trump presidency versus a Kamala presidency. There's debate there. But I think whoever it is, it's going to be higher than 2% for some of those years. So I think something to watch out for is, how does Trump respond to that? And is it going to be like a policy prescription to try to get productivity better, try to, improve supply chains? Like, there's all different ways to respond to it. Or the bad way would be just blame your predecessor. So I hope we don't see that second part of, oh, it's inflation because of the last administration, not on me. But that, that's something to watch out for.
So I actually have a piece of inside info on that. I was talking with someone last night.
Were you at Mar-a-Lago last night?
No. But I was talking with somebody that is talking with the transition team and looking at a treasury position. So he's currently speaking with, kind of being involved in the treasury under a Trump administration. And one of the first things he brought up is that they're going to absolutely deregulate the crap out of oil production and get oil to under $50 a barrel. That is one of like the primary angles. You do that, CPI collapses, right? Like there are like levers they could pull to materially influence that. We'll see, right? None of this is written in stone, but it's interesting to think about, right? Like, if you really want to the Democrats in many ways were hamstrung by other components of their ideology, anti-fossil fuels, for example, crippling them on the economic actions they could take to improve these outcomes. Like, they couldn't increase oil production, but they needed to control the price of oil. It gets so much more incredibly complicated than just like, guess we better produce more oil. And you can say there's like, I'm not making a comment here or there, whatever, people feel about more oil production, less oil production. The point is just that their hands were tied in a way that a Trump administration's hands will not be tied. And I want to throw something out real quick. This is, I think, the most important just view on this election is the difference between this and 2016. I think just as a high level framework for people, 2016 was stick it to the man, screw the system vote by the plebs, right? That was kind of like normal American voters, just very discontent. We're going to elect the outside candidate. That is not what happened this year. What happened this year was elite realignment at a huge scale. And so you're looking at financiers, CEOs, tech CEOs, billionaires, Joe Rogan, all these people. And they have a lot of these people formerly Democratic leaning. They voted blue in the last election. They've maybe voted blue for all of the past elections. And these elites swung to Trump. That is a very different playbook of what is going on versus like the 2016 election.
It's extremely notable phenomenon that happened. It is.
I don't know the last time we saw something like this. Like I don't, not in my lifetime, right? Like
it says a lot about the state of the country and what the kinds of things Trump is prioritizing, and it's just it just says a lot. It says a whole lot, and I think it's an historic thing.
The final thing there is it also creates a very different Trump administration from 2016, where the people that are with him, I think it's easy I think there's a reasonable argument you can make for being very excited about some of these people that are coming along. And I think it produces a very different administration. And so my point being with all of that is like, I think parallels to the 2016 Trump term are limited at best.
Yeah. Last night, he shouted out RFK from the stage and said, "Bobby, you can, do whatever you want. Just don't touch the oil. I'll handle the oil." It's like
exactly.
Yeah, he's funny. I mean, it works. He's a funny dude. There's no doubt about that. So okay, let's talk about this. This is the strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think it's the biggest promise that was made by Trump about Bitcoin during the campaign season. He first mentioned it in Nashville, and then Senator Lummis came on after him and actually announced that she was going to introduce a bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve into Congress. And so here we are. I've been saying this for a couple months now on these shows, but everything's pandering until it happens, right? I think this is a great idea. Obviously, I think it will help spur Bitcoin adoption and help level the playing field for the victims of fiat tyranny all over the world. And I think that's, in my opinion, the most important thing I can be working on. That's why I'm here. So I'm down for this for sure. But we need to hold him accountable, just like with Ross on day one. Like, we need to make sure that happens. So this is going to be interesting. We've got, RFK's there. He gave by far the best political Bitcoin speech I've ever heard in Nashville. So having him in the administration will, I think, help in terms of forcing promises to be kept there. So what are you guys' thoughts on the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Here's another tweet from Dylan LeClaire, basically saying that the race is on now. I don't think he's quite right on the timing. I don't think in 3 months that the U.S. government's going to start actively accumulating. I could be wrong, but I don't see that timeline happening. But still, the clock is ticking either way.
So I'll jump in real quick. Also, this just happened. Paul Graham just replied to Andrew Yang. You see this on Twitter right now, as a few minutes ago, and said, Andrew Yang said, one of the Dems' biggest mistakes was antagonizing Elon, blah, blah, blah. And then Paul goes, their biggest mistake was antagonizing the entire crypto community. And it was entirely unnecessary. There wasn't some other constituency. They were trying to win points by doing it. And this is exactly what we were talking about before. Like, it's such a losing proposition. So just a quick note, you're going to see that dialogue bubble up that it was unnecessary and it cost them the election. I think you might be able to say. On the reserve, it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. You've got the Lummis bill and you've also got the Trump kind of claims. Either one would be material. Both would be game changing. They can look like they're going to control House, Senate, and White House. So they can do it. They can do it. Will they do it?
They can do it. They can do it.
They can do it.
I think the outright accumulation that I think Dylan LeClaire mentioned in his tweet could happen. I think that's a little bit harder. I think the path of least resistance is they take the Bitcoin that they hold today, the U.S. government. Just looking it up quickly, the estimates online were somewhere around 200,000, but those results were from earlier this year. And I think I'm remembering a post about them selling some, but I forget the exact details there. But let's say they have 200,000 Bitcoin, plus or minus a little bit, minus a little bit. So they do have a pretty sizable stack, the U.S. government. I think the much easier path is for Trump to somehow convince the right people to say, hey, don't sell any of this. And this is going to become our strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Yep.
Whether they can get to the next step of saying, hey, we're actively adding to this, and what that takes in terms of Congress to get on board, different departments and agencies to get on board, for them to decide how much they're going to do, also in the face of like massive deficits, right? Because I think most people believe we're still going to be running pretty massive deficits. So that to me is a little bit harder. Again, it could happen, but I think you would have to see them first say, hey, we're not going to sell any of our existing Bitcoin.
I think the target that was mentioned was 1 million Bitcoin, almost 5% of the supply. How much, does anybody know off the top of their head how much gold, what percentage of the gold supply, the global gold supply the US holds? I'll ask ChatGPT.
I was about to ChatGPT it.
Assuming Fort Knox does have the gold we claim.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Audit.
What you got it?
No, I said audit.
Audit. Yeah, exactly.
I'm almost there.
I'm also going to look up the total by all world governments. I think that'd be interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Get the list.
All right, I'm gonna riff on my ideas while we're looking things up here. So, couple on strategic reserve. One, you see a lot of Bitcoin people saying, "Hey, this is bad. Why should we cheer on the state? I thought we were against the banks." All this kind of stuff, and I think that's a pretty misguided point of view. If this thing is the best money we've ever had, it's absolutely inevitable that everyone's going to want it, including our governments, and we have to fall back on the principles of Bitcoin that even if bad people buy Bitcoin or our governments buy Bitcoin, that it stays resilient to capture, because it was always going to get to this stage if it was the money we have. For me, this is no problem. I'm confident in that. Number two, Howard Lutnick, CEO of Cantor, who's on the Department of Governmental Efficiency, he said he wants to create a sovereign wealth fund for the U.S. So find ways to raise revenue in the U.S., monetize natural resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm very supportive of this for a couple of reasons. One, Social Security is bankrupt. So if we want to honor that privilege, we're going to need Bitcoin in there. Same for all pensions. And obviously, we have a major debt problem. So both of those things are very constructive for America. Finally, on the voting block, I agree. You kicked the hornet's nest here, and it's going to be looked back on as a huge mistake. The Bitcoin and crypto community are the politicians' perfect cohort. Grassroots, hyper-connected, hyper-motivated, relatively young, many single-issue voters becoming more wealthy over time. There's no upside to fading that cohort. And
Yep.
yeah, here we are.
Gonna have to be embraced. Yeah, the game theory within U.S. politics has just escalated very, very quickly. And I mean, the Democrats have a lot of obviously soul searching to do, and there will be a decidedly different Democratic Party by the time the next presidential election comes around. Yeah. So apparently it's 17 to 20% of the world's total above ground gold supply is held by the US. So that's a lot. I mean, like, we need to get 5% of the Bitcoin at a minimum, you know, USA, 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 America. We got to get that Bitcoin.
Who hits 1 million Bitcoin first, MicroStrategy or the U.S. government?
Hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, now it's far more likely that it's the U.S. government than it was 2 days ago.
I hope it's just like an asymptote. Like, it's just like they're all like trying to get there, but in trying to get there, they end up pushing up the price so much that they all never quite get there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's it just maybe no one entity could just ever own 1 million coins. It might be impossible. Let's see here.
Even I just saw this the other day. I'll just throw this stat out since we're talking about it. GBTC had at its peak 600,000 Bitcoin.
That's crazy.
That is
so they never
crazy.
They were early. People don't
Exactly.
understand. Like GBTC, I think was since 2013. It was incredibly early to market. Also, like, talk about a fumble, man. Talk about like a pockle fumble. Both GBTC just completely squandering what that was, and then also Coinbase, man. Like, it reversed today, but for a while, MicroStrategy was worth more than Coinbase. Coinbase had a big rally today, so that inverted. I think MicroStrategy would be worth more again soon. But like, there was no reason for that, just because Coinbase had no conviction and didn't buy any Bitcoin. They didn't hold any of the asset. They built their whole business on selling. I mean, just talk about the biggest L's in the industry.
Massive L's. Coinbase. I mean, Coinbase launches, like, MicroStrategy announces the $42 billion plan, and like the same day, or it's close enough, Coinbase is like, we've been working on this, Bitcoin L2 or whatever it was, like some bullshit base or something it was called. I think it was an Ethereum L2, actually. I don't know. It'd probably be better if it was a Bitcoin L2, but maybe not. Anyway, it was just like, this is what we've been working on. And it was just the stark difference in the priorities between Coinbase and MicroStrategy. And they they fumbled completely. They could have 500,000 Bitcoin in their treasury right now.
So, quick question for you guys. Like, how do you feel about our social status getting so much higher as a result of this? What I mean is that podcasters are the new media, and there's no
True.
going back. And I mean, we're podcasting right now. I mean, this was election.
Hey, we're all in, guys. Literally, we're all in. We're going on Fridays, everyone. This is the plan. We're building in public here. Things that we changed. We're like, what are we gonna do with Cafe Bitcoin and Swan Signal and everything? I think we got it figured out. So John, this little side tangent. John is going to publish a Swan Signal news update on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then on Fridays, the four of us are going to do this show sort of in the all-in format. And really excited about that. I think it's going to be a ton of fun for friends debating and getting bullish on Bitcoin. Anyway, excited about that.
Me too, man. It's going to be fun. But we're the new media. Rogan is the new, I mean, it's like the meta has completely changed. And you're going to see it. It's not just for the election. This entire administration, you're going to see all these people continually doing podcasts. I'd bet anything.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
It'll be crazy.
I've not said this, but we were expecting the Tuttle Twins, and we were going to talk with them a little bit about their new Bitcoin episode, but I haven't seen them pop into the studio yet. So we can keep jamming. If you guys need to drop, I understand. I know you've got work to do. Let's just take a little. Oh, Johnny says he's here. I don't see you guys backstage. I'll figure it out, Johnny. We'll bring you up in just a little bit. Cool. This is the price performance post-election for the last four cycles. So this is about where it starts, 0 days after the election, up to about a year after the election. So the average is about 55 weeks to the top post-presidential election. That would put us somewhere in December next year. Late November, early December.
I'm going to make a call.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in terms of it goes way longer. It continues to run. We do not see a massive sell-off in 8 months.
Yeah. I can see that. It's like, I mean, the length of the run up could certainly be longer. The depth of the pullback could certainly be lower. So this feels like, we always say it's different this time, but it's really different this time.
I think it actually is. I mean, they always say it, but I think it is different this time.
It's just fundamentally different in terms of the scale. Pro Bitcoin president, ETFs, like everything. It's MicroStrategy crushing it. It's different, completely different in scale.
Yeah. Like you get the first pro Bitcoin administration, regulatory risk to basically zero, MicroStrategy buying 42 billion, and the spot ETFs launch, and you're telling me we top in 8 months? No way.
No way. All right, guys, good stuff. I'm gonna bring Johnny and Daniel in. You guys feel free to hang out if you want. We're gonna talk about Bitcoin and Tuttle Twins. What's up, guys?
Hey, Brady. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you, fellas. Thanks for being
Happy Bitcoin
here.
Day.
Happy Bitcoin Day, guys.
Yeah, banner day for Bitcoin for sure. Very exciting. So the Tuttle Twins is an animated education show where you guys deliver red pills to kids in a fun way and a very effective way, in my opinion. One of the episodes focused on Bitcoin, and that was your highest performing episode ever, right? This was like what, 2 years ago? A year ago?
Yeah, it was in the middle of the bear market. So yeah. We were putting it out there.
Yep. Yeah, so it was a fantastic episode. Bitcoiners definitely passed it around, millions of views. And so they did a Bitcoin sequel, and we at Swan were fortunate enough to be able to work with them, sponsor and help support it, and even get access to the development process. And that was really fun to get calls from Johnny every once in a while and kind of update us on the script and the song and the animatics. And it was fun to sort of be behind the scenes. And I remember, every time that there was a new kind of draft of the episode, I'd show it to my kids, and they just were, it's hard to get a kid to sit for 20 minutes and watch something with you, right? These days. And they did, rapt attention. My 9-year-old son said it was sick. So you guys know how to make this work, and props to you guys. Tell us a little bit more about the episode. How's it performing? I've got clips queued up that we can talk about as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's done really well. There was a little bit of a debate internally of how much the audience would lash on to CBDCs because it's kind of a niche term, right? And the episode is called a Bitcoin Bash and Corrupted Cash, right? And so there's this idea of when the money is controlled, money is corrupted, and we touch on the CBDCs, and it was always this debate of like, okay, how much do we lean into that message versus just go Bitcoin? Because everybody knows Bitcoin. Not everybody knows about CBDCs. And that's one of the clips that's gone the most viral.
Yeah. Lots of people in other countries are saying, yeah, this is getting approved later this year for us. And we're really scared. And thank you for making this. Let's get this out there. So we can see kind of privately the number of shares that our clips get. And it's pretty cool to see, man, this one is getting shared a ton.
That earworm still lives rent free in my head.
Yeah,
when money is controlled,
I can hear the song right now.
Yeah.
That's what my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, runs around singing when money is controlled, money is corrupted.
It's a good drinking song. So.
Yeah. It is. I don't have the song clip.
You need to hook up with the Bitcoin sea shanties guy.
Oh yeah,
you guys should
BTC
totally
Minstrel.
Let's do a remix. Okay.
Yeah. No, seriously, he's a good friend. I'll connect you guys.
Okay.
All right,
cool,
BTC Minstrel, shout out. Maybe you're watching. I need to see this collab. It needs to happen. Yeah, I don't have the song, but it's a good reason to go out and find this episode. The full thing's on YouTube and Twitter, I believe.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Okay.
And anywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. So check it out. The song is fantastic. Let's take a look at this clip about CBDCs, and it kind of introduces them and explains what a CBDC is, and you guys can get a taste of the Tuttle Twins if you haven't heard it yet.
My Uncle Jamie says if he was the government, he would close Bitcoin down.
The government hates that it can't close down Bitcoin. Nobody can.
Ugh.
So the government is making a creepy knockoff called CBDCs. CBDCs?
Wait, so what are CBDCs?
Central bank digital currencies. Instead of being completely uncontrolled, this money is completely controlled.
Why would banks want to create their own digital money when they already control our paper money?
Because they can't control how you use your paper money. Once it leaves the bank, it becomes hard to trace and nearly impossible to control. CBDCs would allow the government to completely control the money, to spy on everything you buy. Imagine the government taxing you instantly, seizing your money whenever they feel like it. Say the wrong thing in a post, poof, you're a terrorist. And poof, no more money in your bank account. Today, most of the countries in the world are considering using CBDCs. And once this kind of power is unleashed, it may be nearly impossible to reverse.
Awesome stuff.
Puts kids right to sleep, you know.
That's great. And then there's there's also a cameo from Jamie Dimon. It's Uncle Jamie in the episode. He's not called Jamie Dimon explicitly, but and Jamie Dimon's niece is one of the main child characters. And anyway, there's this great bit where Jamie is playing with his pet rocks. You know, his gold is his pet rock. And they have this entire like scene set up, like he's built a model of this town where all these rocks live, and like he plays with them and does their voices and everything. Fantastic stuff. And that whole scene with Granite yelling, and there's like other puns on names of people who work in the fiat money land, our fiat overlords. Anyway, awesome stuff.
So let me ask you guys a question. Like, what prompted you to do this? Like, how did we get here? Your cartoons like came out of nowhere. They were incredible. They were like these network quality children's cartoons about Bitcoin. Like, where did it come from?
Okay, so I've been into Bitcoin since the first Bitcoin I bought was $120, and then I quickly sold at $135 and was like, yes. Or it's like a 45 or something. I was like, I beat the system. I made 20% in 3 weeks or whatever it was. I don't know. And then, quickly regretted that decision afterwards. but I had a brother that orange pilled me at a family get together, and he had just kind of been following it and helped me understand blockchain technology at that point. And I kind of caught the vision for it and went and bought my first Bitcoin. And so when we went to do Tuttle Twins, this show is all about teaching kids principles of freedom and economics, the ones that they won't be taught in schools and what they likely won't be taught in culture. And so that's what we're doing with it. And I have a brother who's an executive producer on the show, Jeffrey. He's been a big Bitcoiner all the way along, and he kind of been pushing for us to do a Bitcoin episode, since the show began. And I was like, that doesn't really feel like something we want to dive into, like on season 1. Let's really gain the audience's trust that we're really trying to teach these rights to life, liberty, property, and really sound economics before we go in and say, hey, Bitcoin, let's do this thing. Like that, not everybody's necessarily down for that. And so it was in season 2 that Johnny kind of started wrapping his head around kind of what the concept for a Bitcoin episode could look like, and started talking to Jeffrey and pitching me on things. And that's kind of where we kind of dove into it.
And I'll add too, we'd seen our breakout episode from season 1 was one on the inflation monster. And so we'd seen, wow, there is a lot of people, right, through the pandemic, the end of the pandemic, really dealing with inflation. And so the pain was so real to them. And to be honest, it was a kind of a bummer of an episode, because it's like, well, nothing we can do, and we have this tagline at the end. I think we did even say, you can buy stocks, gold, or Bitcoin at the time, right? It was like
a little passing reference.
But it's kind of a bummer of an episode where you're being stolen from. And as much as we don't shy away from introducing heavy and dark subjects to kids, we also like to leave them with hope. And I think that's what the missing piece to that episode was.
Ooh, that's a great intro. Or here, let's watch this clip real quick.
Future is so scary. What hope do we have?
As more people, companies, and even countries start to hold money that no one can control, like Bitcoin, they may see the advantages and stop the creepy CBDCs themselves.
Uncontrolled money won't solve all the world's problems, but it will force the government, companies, and people to act more honestly.
When you can't change the money changes you.
Uncle Jamie wouldn't lie. Dollars are safe. A little inflation isn't theft, it's normal. Bitcoin doesn't do anything. Bitcoin is a pet rock. A useless, pointless pet rock!
Yeah, there's a little intro to the pet rock scene. But yeah, that's some hope for the future. I love that. Perfect segue, sir.
I've got one quick question that you guys hopefully can weave in your answer. When did you become okay with the fact that you might not be able to walk into a JP Morgan Chase bank branch ever again?
Well, I currently hold an account at a major bank that will remain unmentioned. And
rhymes with Chase.
But anyway, it hasn't been a problem yet, but I'm sure it will be at some point.
Hey, it's not gonna be a problem now.
It's
not gonna be a problem now.
I don't know which the last name of this said Jamie is.
Yeah,
It's just
come on, it's Uncle Jamie. All the quotes are from Jamie Dimon in the episode, but it's Uncle Jamie.
Yeah, you'll just get a call from Donnie, President Donnie, and be like,
right.
Jamie.
We know we're probably on some watch list. We're just not sure how high up on the list we are. Honestly,
or how many of them?
Yeah, come on.
Awesome. This is one. Here, I'm going to play one more clip. This is just for the plebs, for the Bitcoiners.
Meanwhile, in the Bitcoin verse, the money is fixed, the Kool-Aid is orange, and we're definitely not in a cult.
See, when you say it like that, it makes people think we are in a cult.
Bitcoin is loud. Fiat is war.
See, doyas are evil.
Is this the hippie or Bitcoin part of the internet?
I think both.
That's amazing. That's really, really good.
We should have mentioned the benefits of sunlight too, Stephen.
You can still make up for it, my friend. You can still do the right thing.
There was a point when the script included a debate between cast iron and stainless steel frying pans.
Yeah.
That might have been just a little too deep of a cut.
Just a little too
deep cut. Yeah, I love all the shout outs, man. It's awesome. And then there's also a like a yacht that goes by that has like it says Swan on the side of it, and it's pretty hilarious.
We a fun fact with the sort of Safedine cameo there. Early on, he's been watching our show for a few years now with his kids, and early on he emailed us and said, "Guys, you're putting way too many seed oils and sugar in your show, and you have like one Tuttle Twin wants to eat a gummy bear all the time." And so we're like, Safedine, you earned this part, you earned it. And actually, I mean, he's inspired us to go down that rabbit hole. So we'll probably do a food industrial complex coming up soon, and just sort of open kids' eyes up to the food pyramid.
Yeah, but speaking of the hope, kids, we do find kids now asking for their chores to be paid in Bitcoin, to have their allowance paid in Bitcoin. Like there's a lot of that kind of activity where the interest from young kids, there's not so much of a barrier for them to leap over of all this sort of financial wisdom baggage that you have from the current system, to where it just be like, oh, Bitcoin, it's this thing that can't just be, replicated out of thin air. They get it pretty quickly, and then they really want a part of it. And that's really encouraging. It's the ability for the individual to kind of opt out of the system rather than going and having to change the system from a top level down. From grassroots up, that's way better.
You've got to imagine that there is some like 16-year-old kid out there whose parents were like an early adopter of Bitcoin in like 2012, and they've been paying their allowance in Bitcoin ever since. And they're worth like $1 million from their
yeah.
somewhere.
So speaking of which, I had my kids back when I got into Bitcoin. I gave them the opportunity to take some of their spending money and some of their savings money and put it in Bitcoin. And 3 of them chose to do that. Even my wife, who had this cardigan she wanted to buy, and she put it into Bitcoin instead. And
it's an expensive cardigan.
Yeah, the cardigan's worth over $400 now. And and my son to put in just a little bit of his spending money. It was like $12 that he put in, and then he pulled it out. I think it was last year, and bought himself a PlayStation with it.
Hell yeah, let's go.
So I've seen some of this stuff firsthand, and I have another daughter. She's got her money in there, in her spending money. She's just like, "Let it ride, Dad. Let it ride. Just keep going."
Hey, look, this is how it spreads amongst the kids, right? Yep. He's like, I bought some Bitcoin, and 2 years later, I bought a PM for $12, and I bought a PlayStation 2 years later. All of a sudden, the kids are all like,
the Lamborghini, kind of the flex of, you see my Heelys?
Yeah, exactly.
Heelys now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is kind of this bottom up thing, this pattern that we're seeing, these tectonic plates shift, with typical media. Now it's podcast that's very organic and grassroots bottom up. And I mean, we're just seeing that with the show. Like, it is grassroots, and we're literally going from the bottom, from kids up sometimes to parents. They're orange pilling their parents, or telling them about inflation or central planning or whatever it is. And it's really refreshing and cool to be a part of.
And it's playing the long game, right? That we want to get kids, start them off with a really good foundation of the principles, help them develop skills for critical thinking in the application of that, and then get them as involved as possible in their local community. So it's not about like winning an election cycle or anything like that. This is all intended for 6 to 12-year-olds.
It's about winning the election cycle in 2 cycles.
Exactly.
I mean, in reality, we're not like a pro one party show. It's more
at all
pro ideas of freedom. And so
So this speaks to I think one of the things our education system has failed so much at has been financial education, whether that's even just fiat financial education. You know what I mean? Like even just, credit cards and interest and saving money and investing, like basic stuff. I mean, there's so much crap that we teach kids, that we spend time in public resources teaching kids, and they do not understand how to manage money. So, I mean, this has been a thing for a while that like children need financial education. We do not live on the savannas anymore. Like we are not hunter-gatherers. Like financial literacy is like a core survival skill, but we don't treat it as such.
Yeah, and we had a whole episode that we dedicated to basically to money management, and specifically teaching the higher level skill of delayed gratification. That it doesn't just apply to, you know, the saving of money and investing it and thinking more long term, but also in the way that you spend your time, right? Are you sitting there scrolling on a phone, or are you like practicing your instrument or developing your skill that you want to use later? And so those are the kind of things we're trying to teach to kids that, you know, apply on a much broader scale when it comes to things like economics and the principles of freedom, that if kids aren't sort of taking responsibility within their own lives, then none of the stuff really matters. Like we can lose our freedoms in a heartbeat if we're not sort of stepping up to the plate ourselves, taking responsibility, delaying gratification, some of these kind of core principles like the time preference of money and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'll just chime in that you guys reminded me of the meme that has been circulating for a while, but it was like, you know, I don't know how a mortgage works. I don't know how to file my taxes, but I can calculate, you know, the distance of this part of the triangle. And, you know, it's like, I love math. That was my favorite, best subject growing up. I'm not trying to knock it, but like the usefulness of that kind of stuff in the real world versus some sort of financial accounting literacy is like, it's just night and day. And we got to recognize that.
Yep, 100%.
It's awesome. All right, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, Johnny and Daniel. Thanks, John. Thanks, Steven. We will be back this Friday, 2 days from now. You'll have the Swan Squad joining on Swan Signal again at the same time, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. That's me and John and Brandon and Steven. And we'll just, we'll talk Bitcoin. I'm sure we'll have some debates along the way, and it should be a lot of fun. So join us live on Friday for that. And you know what? I'll take it out with a Tuttle Twins Swan ad. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll see you on Friday.
With parental permission.
I meant actually, how do I buy some Bitcoin?
Why does it say incoming unskippable ad?
One easy way to buy Bitcoin is with Swan, a Bitcoin-only app with no fees on your first $10,000. Quick parents, scan the QR code, download the app, and exchange your controlled money for uncontrolled money today. Sponsored by Swan. And we'd like to thank our second sponsor, Grandma Bunion Cream. Derek!